Recording in progress.
Kakadosh, Boker Tov. Masechet Yevamot Daf Amud Aleph 9A1. Okay. Yesterday we basically finished off by trying to understand that according to Rebbe, since you do not need aleha for yibum, because if you remember, according to Shittat Rebbe, right, he says that you don't even need a pasuk for arayot, right, and you don't even need a pasuk for tzarot. You needed the pasuk for tzarot of tzarot, like tzarat, right, for the tzarot or whatever it was, and even with that, you didn't need aleha. So what do you need it for? So Rebbe, hay aleha me avile. What did Rebbe do with the word aleha? So he says, Mibaile, he needed it for another Gizra Shavalich. The Tanya, just like we learned in Braita, I'm on Chet Amubed just on the bottom, just to get back into it, where it says, En chayvim bedin, ela al davar, shezedono karet v'shigato chatat. So here we have like this. The bedin, right, if they right now came and they made a mistake, which if the zedono is karet, which means if you did it purposely, it's karet. And if you did it accidentally, it's going to be a chatat. That is the case where the bedin are going to be chayavim to bring a par helem davar. Okay? Vechen ha-kohen ha-mashiach. Also the kohen ha-mashiach is going to be the exact same thing. Okay? Lo ba'avodat kochavim, but not by avodat kochavim. Ela al davar shechayavim. So the same thing, the same halacha applies to avodat kochavim. Utzana nami, and we also learned, okay, in the Mishnah Norayot, Kol mitzvah shebatorah shechayivim al zedono karet right v'shigato chatat. Any mitzvot in the Torah that you're going to be chayav, if you did it purposely on karet and accidentally chatat, yachid mevi kisba or seira. So now like this, pay attention now. We're going to have a few different cases. You have number one, yachid, an individual. So anytime when an individual is going to do something accidentally, which the accidentally is going to be chayav chatat, but the purpose, on purpose, will be chayav karet. So the yachid individual is going to be a kisba or seira, a sheep or a she-goat, okay, as a chatat. Okay, that's a yachid. Next case, nasi. Nasi, he brings a sa'ir, okay, which is the he-goat. Mashiach ubetin, now the kohen Mashiach, right, that is the kohen which is anointed with oil, and the bedin, they are going to bring a par. Okay, so you have nasi, right, you have a yachid, you have kohen Mashiach, and the bedin. Kohen Mashiach or bedin over here is the same halacha. It's a par elem davar, okay, and nasi is going to bring a sa'ir, and a yachid, kisba or seira. Ba'avodat kochavim, right, when it's talking about now avodah zarah, meaning until now we were talking about kol mitzvot Shabbat Torah. Now we go to avodah zarah. By avodah zarah, yachid, nasi, ve'kohen Mashiach, right, mevin seira. Here you put the other three together: a yachid, nasi, and kohen Mashiach, seira. Yeah, she-goat. Tzibur mevin par v'sayin. The tzibur are going to bring a par and the sayin. Why? Par leolah, the sayin lechatat. Okay, this is all this. Okay, so remember, you have technically it's like four cases. You have yachid, you have nasi, kohen Mashiach, and the bedin. Four different cases. Right? No, the yachid, nasi, the kohen Mashiach, and the bedin. Okay, now that's to do with all of the avirot in the Torah. You had the differences, but we put the kohen Mashiach and the bedin together with a par. Now to do with avodah zarah, it was different. So we put the yachid, nasi, and kohen Mashiach together, and then we put the tzibur differently, and the tzibur brings two korbanot. So says the Gemara, menah nemile. How do we know these words? How do we know that we don't bring a chatat unless it's going to be that it's going to be purposely there, purposely done? Yeah, the Tanu Rabbanan we learned in a Braita. V'node'ah hachatat asher chateu alea. It was known the chatat, right, that they sinned. Rebbe comes and he says, Ne'emar kan aleha, ne'emar lehalan alea. It says over here in Vayikra, right, v'node'ah hachatat asher chateu aleha. What does it say about achot ishto? Aleha. V'ne'emar lehalan achot ishto alea. Just like Malehalan, just like by a chotisha, by the sister-in-law, it's davar shechayvim al zedono karet v'shigdoto chatat. If a person did it willingly, meaning on purpose, he gets karet, and if it was done accidentally, it's going to be a chatat. Afkan, so to here, by the aleha, by the parhelem davar shechayvim al zedono karet v'shigdoto chatat. It has to be that it's going to be something which, if you did it purposely, it's going to be karet. If you did it accidentally, it's going to be chatat. So from here we learn something incredible. Alea has nothing to do with the ibum, because before we were connecting alea of achot ishto and alea of yevama yavo alea. Now we threw that out in the window. Because according to Shtat Rebbe, you don't need a pasuk for achot ishto. It's pashut. All the arayot are going to be asur. You don't need any psukim. So what do I need alea? Alea is I'm connecting achot ishto to the chatat over here. That just like achot ishto, if a person has willingly relations with a sister-in-law, it's going to be karet, and accidentally it's going to be chatat. So therefore, so too, by the case here of that a person that did not know about a certain avera, it has to be that he brings a chatat only if it was something that if you would have done purposely would have been chayav karet, and accidentally you would have been chayav chatat. So now the Gemara says, now that I just used aleha, says the Gemara, ashkechan tzibur. This is the tzibur, right, which are going to be chayav to bring a par only on davar shezedono karet. Kohen HaMashiach menalam. How do I know Kohen HaMashiach? Because remember, until now, we went and we used this general rule that it's something which is zedono karet, which is chatat. We use it for everybody, for the yachid, for the tzibur, for the Kohen HaMashiach, for the nasi. So now, how do we know it by everybody, right? So we just found the tzibur, because it says v'nodia chatat, it was nodia to the tzibur, right? But how do you know now that it's the Kohen HaMashiach also? So dichtiv beKohen HaMashiach, so answers the Gemara, it says by the Kohen HaMashiach, im Kohen HaMashiach yecheta le'ashmat ha'am. What does that mean? If the Kohen HaMashiach is going to make a mistake like ashmat ha'am, Mashiach tzibur. From the fact that it says that the Kohen HaMashiach is going to make a sin, just like ashmat ha'am, so we equated the tzibur, which is ashmat ha'am, the am, to the Kohen HaMashiach. So therefore, just like the am, the tzibur has to be something which zedono karet, shigato chatat, and that we learned from alea. So to now, we are going to say the Kohen HaMashiach has to be the same halacha, because we equated it when we said im Kohen HaMashiach yecheta le'ashmat ha'am. Okay? So basically, now the Gemara is going to say, okay, very good. Yachid v'nasi. How do you learn now Yachid v'nasi? Remember, how many cases are we talking about? We talked about the tzibur, okay, which is like the bedin. We talked about Kohen HaMashiach, nasi, and a Yachid. Remember, those are the four cases. So we just learned the tzibur from alea, gzera shava, right? When it says alea ba'yachot ishto and v'nudea chatat shechatu alea. We learned Kohen HaMashiach to the tzibur, right? L'ashmat ha'am. What about Yachid v'nasi? So he says, Atya, it comes from a gzera shava. Mitzvot. What does that mean? It says by par shel tzibur. Sorry, thank you. It says by the par shel tzibur, v'im kol adat Yisrael yishhu v'asu b'acham mikom mitzvot asher lo ta'asena. By the nasi, it says, Asher nasi yechata v'asa acham mikom mitzvot asher lo ta'asena. And by the Yachid, it says, v'im nefesh achat techeta v'shkaga ba'asota acham mitzvot asher lo ta'asena. Since it says mitzvot by the nasi, mitzvot by the Yachid, and mitzvot by the tzibur, I connect all of them together. What does that mean? It always has to be that mitzvot, that it has to be that if a person is going to do something which, if he did it purposely, it's going to be chayav karet. If he did it accidentally, it's going to be chayav chatat. Because I connected all three together. Yachid, nasi, and the tzibur. Capish? Okay, very good. So says the Gemara, fine. I explained the first part of what we learned this morning. The first part of what we learned this morning was, we said, Kol mitzvot shebatorah shechayavim al zedono karet v'shekudo chatat. All the mitzvot of the Torah that you're going to be chayav, if you did it purposely karet, if you did it by accident on chatat, Yachid mevi kisva seira. Nasi mevi said. Mashiach ubedin mevi impar. Right? Bavodat kochavim, it's a different halacha. So now the Gemara is going to ask, okay, fine. Chazak ubaruch, right? Very good. But now 1 second. How do you know now about avodat kochavim? How do you know about avodat kochavim? Yeah? So he says, velo ba'avodat kochavim, ela al davar shechavim az adno karet shekudochayev chatat. Right? So now one more time. We just learned the first part of the Braita. Yeah? Everyone's with me? One more time. First part of the Braita. First part of the Braita, other mitzvot, not avodah zarah. Other mitzvot. You've got Yachid, you've got the Tzibur, you've got Nasi, and Kohen Mashiach. In all those cases, you need something which is al zidono chayav karet, al shigato chayav chatat. How do we learn it? Gezerah shava, right? Tzibur to achot ishto. From there we learn Kohen Mashiach to Hashmat Ha'am, to the Tzibur. From there we learn to the Tzibur, Yachid, Nasi, and Yachid, Nasi to the Tzibur. Where did he learn it from? Mitzvot. What about now Avodat Kochavim? Avodat Kochavim was the next part of the Braita. The next part of the Braita said, Avodat Kochavim, Yachid, Nasi, Mashiach. Here we put them together. The Yachid, the individual, the Nasi, right, which is the prince. Remember, he's the one in charge of the halachot. Kohen Mashiach, they bring a seirah. The Tzibur, they have to bring a part of his sayid. How do we know there also that has to be davar zedono karev shiguto chayav chatat? So he says, Tzibur ba'avodat kochavim yalif me'eneh. By the Tzibur, by avodah zarah, you learn it from gezerah shava. Me'eneh. Why? Because by there we learned, right, by the Tzibur, by other averot, v'ne'elam davar me'eneh ha'kahal. It was hidden from the eyes of the kahal. So since it says that it's hidden from the eyes of the kahal, and it says by the tzibur by avodah zarah, v'aya im me'eneh ha'edah nesta lishkaga. And if it was that from the eyes of the congregation, it was done accidentally. So you see me'eneh. So therefore you see by the tzibur by other averot, and by the tzibur from avodah zarah. So therefore I come and I connect it. I connect. How do I know by the tzibur by other mitzvot? Now we're going back to the avodah zarah. By avodah zarah, which was the seifa of that braita, the seifa of that avodah kochavim, yachid, nasi, and kohen mashiach is all the same thing, that they bring a seira, okay? And the bedin, or basically the tzibur, are going to bring a parvesai. So says the Gemara, how do I know that by avodat kochavim it also has to be the same general rule? That is davar shechavim azedono karev shiguto chatat. So says tzibur b'avodat kochavim, you learn it gezerah shava from shar mitzvot to avodah zarah, because it's a gezerah shava me'eneh. It says me'eneh by shar averot to do with the tzibur, and it says me'eneh by avodah zarah by the tzibur. So I connected tzibur to tzibur of shar mitzvot, tzibur avodah zarah. Just like tzibur of shar mitzvot or shar averot, it's talking about shigato zidono karet shigato chatat. So to here it's the exact same halacha to do with avodah zarah. What about yachid nasi u'mashiach? It says they learn it from the pasuk. Nefesh achat techeta bishkaga v'ikriva ezvat shenata lechata. It says if one person is going to make a sin, echad yachid ve'echad nasi ve'echad kohen mashiach v'mashma. Since it says nefesh achat, it's not a tzibur. It was nefesh achat. It's one person. But the same thing, once you put nefesh achat, the nefesh achat could either be a nasi, the nefesh achat could either be a kohen mashiach, and it could be a yachid. So therefore now the letter vav, because it says ve'im nefesh achat, right? Now the letter vav, which was written ve'im nefesh achat, mosif al inyan rishon. It's going to add on the inyan rishon. So yilmad min atachton min al. So therefore, right, since it was written over there, right, right, that we're talking about avodah zarah by tzibur, that it's going to be connected to the shar mitzvot or averot of the tzibur, and therefore by the tzibur it has to be davar shezedono karet shigato chayav chatat. And 3 psukim later it tells you the nefesh achat techeta bishkaga, that if it was a one individual that does this averah. So what are we referring to? We're referring to that everything is going to be the same thing. What does it mean everything is going to be the same thing? That it has the same halachot. What's the same halachot? That it's going to be דבר שזדונו כרת, ושגרתו חייב חטאת. Okay, now we learn whether it's going to be the Nasi, the Kohen HaMashiach, and the Kohen HaMashiach Yachid, and the Nasi. All three. Okay, three people. Okay, fine. If you pay attention, there's a chart. Pay attention to the chart on the bottom. The chart on the bottom says, right, Rebbe. We're going now on Rebbe. Rebbe comes and says, yeah, Par Helem Davar al Kol HaMitzvot, Par Kohen HaMashiach al Kol HaMitzvot, Yachid v'Nasi al Kol HaMitzvot, Chatat HaKal al Avodah Zarah, Chatat Yachid al Avodah Zarah, which is Yachid Nasi Mashiach. You have all of them there. So again, one more time. Par Helem Davar al Kol HaMitzvot, right, is going to be learned from Zera Shava Alea Alea. The Kohen HaMashiach is a Ekesh, right, to, right, Lashmat Ha'am. It's a Ekesh. That's what we just learned. Yachid v'Nasi al Kol HaMitzvot. They learn it from mitzvot, Gzera Shava. Chatat HaKahal on Avodah Zarah, right? That they learn it from Gzera Shava me'eneh. And Chatat Yachid al Avodah Zarah, Yachid v'Nasi Mashiach, they learn it from the extra vav. Ve'im nefesh achat techata bishkaga. Okay? Gemara says now the Gemara, now we're going in Shitat Rabbanan. Why do we have to go in Shitat Rabbanan? I'm going to ask you guys, what did the rabbis do with Alea Alea? The rabbis used it for the entire concept of the Yibum. Yeah, so if the rabbis used Alea Alea for Yibum, they obviously didn't learn it for here. So the question is, V'Rabbanan, Hai Svara Minalehu. How do you know now, according to the rabbis, all these halachot? I just gave you all the halachot, right, about that it has to be the verses Zedono Karet, V'Shegguto Chayav Chatat. How do you know that, according to the Rabbanan, if the Alea Alea, which is the building block, that's the first one of everything, fell off? Bezachot Ishto, I'm using it for what? For a Gzera Shava, to do with Yibum. I'm not using it for Par Helem Davar Shel Tzibur. So for the entire building block, everything just went out the drain. So how do the rabbis learn all these halachot? So says the Gemara, Nafka Lehumi the Makri, right? Le Rabbi Yoshua Librei. They learn it from a drasha that Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi taught his son. It says in the Torah, this is talking about Yachid, that he's chayav a seira lechatat. So an individual, he's going to be chayav a seira to a chatat if he did shigirat avodah zarah. What is shigirat avodah zarah? This is very simple. He went and he took a stone and he threw it at avodah zarah, and then he realized that that's how you serve the avodah zarah. So right now he just did avodah zarah, but he didn't want to serve the avodah zarah. He took a stone and he wanted to throw it at it, right? But that's how you serve it. So therefore he was shogeg, but he did avodah zarah. So it's called shigirat avodah zarah, police and all the other ones that we have there. Right? Or he did his excrement on Balpo, Peor, or all the other things. So it says in the Torah, Torah achat yelachem laose bishkaga. It says in the Torah, there's one Torah for you guys if you do it by accidentally. And then it says, Vehanefesh asher taseh biyad ramah, if you do it purposely, you get karet. Okay? Vehanefesh asher taseh biyad ramah, venichreta hanefesh bikar ramah. So uksha kol haTorah kula lavodat kochavim. So therefore, the entire Torah has a kesh to Avodat Kochavim. What does that mean? It says just like by the Avodat Kochavim, right? It's something which is Zedono Karet ve Shigigato Chayav Chatat. So too, the entire Torah is going to be the same thing. Ma Avodat Kochavim davar shechavim Zedono Karet ve Shigigato Chayav Chatat. Av kol davar shezedono Karet ve Shigigato Chayav Chatat. Okay, until here or not? So one more time. In the list of the Rabbi, in the list of Rebbe, right? In the list of Rebbe. Right? In the list of Rebbe, we have, right? What do we have? We have Alea Alea, Tzibur, okay, Tzibur, right? To Achot Ishto, right? That's how we learn. We connected Kohen HaMashiach to the Tzibur, and then we connected the Nasi and the Yachid to the Tzibur. Okay, that's what we did in Rebbe. That's by Shar Mitzvot. Then by Avodah Zarah, we came and we got different learnings. Here, all of a sudden, we changed everything. We connected in Rabbanan, we connected all the mitzvot to Avodah Zarah Yashar. Right? We connected all the mitzvot to Avodah Zarah Yashar. But we didn't do it by the Tzibur. We did it by the Yachid. Yeah, by the Yachid, right? It was written, Torah achat yelachem laose bishkaga, v'hanefesh shetaseh biyad ramah v'nichreta. So he says, there's a hekesh, the entire kula, kol haTorah kula, meaning all of it, to Avodah Zarah. Just like he says over here, just like Avodah Zarah, Zedono Karet, Shiguto Chayav Chatat, so to all the mitzvot. So I went Yashar. I went Avodah Zarah to Shara Mitzvot. But now he says, well, 1 second. But that is going to be Hashkechan Mekor for the Yachid, Venasi, Umashiach, Ben Bavodah Zarah, Ben B'Shar Mitzvot. Because it says, when it says Ve'anefesh, who's Ve'anefesh? Who's Ve'anefesh? Yachid, Kohen HaMashiach, Venasi. Why? Because this is Nefesh. Nefesh, Nefesh Achat, Yechidim. It's not the Tzibur. So I just found here that since it says Ve'anefesh Shesheta Sebi Yad Rama, Yad Rama gets karet, right? Zedono karet. When it says if you do La'oseh Bishkaga, that's B'Shogeg, Chayav Chatat. So therefore, by Yachid, Nasi, Kohen HaMashiach, I connected Shar Mitzvot to Avodah Zarah. Just like, right, there's Aikesh, right? Just like Shar Mitzvot, right? Sorry, just like by Avodah Zarah, Zedono Karet Shiguto Chayav Chatat, so too by Shar Mitzvot the same halacha. What do you do now about the Tzibur? So he says, Tzibur ba'avodat kochavim minayin, right? Tzibur ba'avodah zarah. How do you know that you're only going to be chayav if you do something on karet? Amarka, it says in the pasuk, ve'im nefesh. The vav, ve'ilmad elyon mitachton. So I'm going to learn, right, the elyon to the tachton, which means just like the elyon, which is talking about korban tzibur, I'm going to learn it that just like to do the tachton, we're talking about yechidim, you're only going to be chayav a korban if you did it bezedono karet v'shigutu chayav chatat. So too by the tzibur, you're going to learn the same thing. But this we only connected tzibur of avodah zarah. How do you know tzibur by shar mitzvot? So says the Gemara Menalan. So here we learn tzibur me'ene me'ene. Here we learn me'ene me'ene by the tzibur. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rebbe, and according to Rebbe, Hai Torah achat yelachem ma'avile. According to Rebbe, what does he do with Torah achat? At the end of the day, Rebbe didn't use this pasuk. So what does Rebbe do with this pasuk of Torah achat yelachem? So he says, we need it for that which we learned in a baraita. The baraita says, since we always see that by avodah zarah there's a difference between a yachid and a rabim. What is a rabim? Ira nidachat. Why? Yechidim, if an individual does avodah zarah, what's his punishment? No, but not bechavana karet, but he has atra and edim. He's got warnings and he's got witnesses. What does a yachid get? Sekila. Okay, lefichach, therefore, mamon palat. Right? We do sekila to him, but we're allowed to take his money. Meaning the money is permitted. Let's say he's got an inheritance, so the inheritors take the money. You don't have to do anything with the money. Why? Because since you were machmir on him, you give him sekila, the money is going to be saved. Merubin by ira nidachat besaif. They have a lighter punishment. What's the lighter punishment? Saif. They all get killed by the sword. They don't get sekila. They get killed by the sword. But mamonan avad. We come and we completely destroy, right, their money. So yachol nachlok b'kavanatehen. I would have thought that you also make a difference in the korbanot, which means the korban that they're bringing. Tamulomar Torah achat. What does that mean? It doesn't matter whether it's going to be the tzibur, right, which means everybody in the ira nidachat or the yachid. They are all going to bring the same se'ira, just like a yachid. Okay, and from here we're going to start. Kadosh, we're continuing now on the Daf Yomi towards the bottom, where it says that Rebbe, what does he do with the Torah achat? What does he do with it? So he says he needed it because means the difference between a few people doing avodah zarah and a public that's doing avodah zarah. When it's a few people, every single yachid is judged as a yachid. They get sekila and their money is saved, which means that you could use their money, right? That means the inheritors or whatever it is, they could use the money. But when it's going to be merubin, which means ira nidachat, so everybody is killed with saif, which is a much lighter punishment. It's not sekila, it's saif, right? Which is the headache, but mamonan avad. All their chush, all their property is completely burnt. So I would have thought to say, then we're going to divide their korbanot as well. Tamunuman can teach you Torah achat, one Torah. So Matki Fla Rav Chilkiya Melgronia asks Rav Chilkiya Melgronia, Ta'ama de Katav Rachmana, from the bright eye comes out of the difference between Rabbim, that it's going to be Nidonim like Yechidim to do the Chatat Avodah Zarah, is because it says Torah achat yelachem. Halav hachi. But if it did not say Torah achat yelachem, Havamina, I would have thought to say nechalek, that you're going to differentiate, that if there's a lot of people that are going to bring a different korban, my late, what are they going to bring? Yeah, what are they going to bring? You wanted to tell me that there's a difference between a lot of people and a few people bringing the korban. What are you going to bring? Light to par, if they're going to bring a par, right? It can be because the tzibur b'shar mitzvot u'demaiti. That's what the tzibur bring in other mitzvot. In other mitzvot, you bring a par helem davar shel tzibur. So therefore, it's a par. If you're going to bring a kisba, if you're going to bring a sheep, yachid b'shar mitzvot u'demaiti. The yachid brings it in other mitzvot. If it's going to be a sa'id, nasi b'shar mitzvot u'demaiti. Par le'olah v'se'id lechatat, the tzibur b'avodot kachavim u'demaiti. Ve'elamai, what does that have to be? Seira. Yachid nami ainu korbanot. That's the yachid anyway. Which means like this. Yeah, what are we trying to do over here? We're trying to come and say that there was a havamina, that there's a different korban for the people that are doing avodah zarah, whether it's going to be a yachid or a tzibur. He says, how are you going to have a different korban? Every korban that you're going to bring to me, somebody's also already bringing that korban, right? And that's why he comes and he says, I don't understand you. If he's going to bring a bull, a par, so the tzibur already bring it in shar mitzvot. So it can be now that the par is going to be brought for the avodah zarah. If it's going to be a kisba, the yachid brings it for shar mitzvot. If it's going to be a sa'id, the nasi brings it for shar mitzvot. If it's going to be par le'olah v'se'id lechatat, that's what the tzibur brings by avodah kochavim. So it can't be b'shar mitzvot. So it has to be a seira, but the seira also yachid brings a seira. So basically, right, it comes out that there's no korban which you could come and say that if it's going to be the entire city, Ira Nidacha, doing Avodah Zarah, they're going to be chayav in it. So what does that mean then? Why do you need a pasuk Torah Achat Yelachem? Torah Achat Yelachem means it has the same korban. Havamina, maybe it's a different korban. Which different korban is it going to be? Every korban that I just brought was already brought by somebody for a different purpose. So says the Gemara, you still need Torah Achat Yelachem. Itzich, you need it. Why? I would have thought to say, Hoil v'tzibur be'ora'ah. Since the tzibur, if they made a mistake in the avodah zarah, what do they bring? Par le'olah v'sa'ir lechatat. They bring a bull for a burnt offering and a sa'ir, right? A higel for a chatat, for a sin offering. In hunami, they also, the insheir and dachat, naitu ipru, should bring the same but opposite. Par lechatat v'sa'ir le'olah. Inami, right? So therefore, that's the havamina. Meaning, I would have brought two korbanot, but I flip it. One more time. We're talking about a tzibur, right? Ba'avodat kochavim. What do you bring a tzibur by avodat kochavim? You bring par le'olah v'sa'ir lechatat, right? So now, what did I want to say? I wanted to say now that when you have an ida nidachat, which is the rabbim doing avodah zarah, so therefore, what's going to happen? They should flip it. You should bring a par lechatat v'sa'ir le'olah, right? Why? In order that it's a different korban. So therefore, that's why Torah Achat tells you that it's the same korban. Inami, another explanation. Sarich, I need this korban miyuchad. Why? I would have thought to say that since we cannot bring a korban which is different than any other korban, en lo takana, which means we don't want to give them a korban. Why don't we want to give them a korban? So they don't have a kapara. Remember, a korban is an atonement. We don't want to give them this atonement. So Kamash Maran comes to teach you that we say Torah Achat, right? The what? That anshe ida nidachat. That they made a mistake in avodah zarah, they're going to be like yechidim, that each one of them is a seira lechatat, and therefore it's going to be the same halacha. That means we would have had a havamina that they don't bring at all, because we don't want them to have a kapara. Kamash malan, that they do bring it, and it's exact same. Amar Levi le Rebbe. So says Levi to Rebbe, my idia de tani, because now that we just finished our diyun with the concept of our mishnah, that we spoke about whether we're learning. Right, so until now we finished, because we finished with alea, we finished with all these things, nekuda. Now we're starting something new. Pay attention, we're starting something new. Okay? The Gemara says like this. Says Levi, right? Levi to Rebbe. My idia detani chameshesre. Why are you teaching chameshesre? Litni. What is litni? We should learn, right? Sheshesre, 16. Right? So why? Because basically, instead of bringing 15 cases, we should be bringing 16 cases. Okay? Now listen to what the Rebbe comes and he tells, right, the student. Amar le, he tells him, Kimdumeli she'en lo moach bekodkodo. Yeah, it appears to me that he doesn't have a moach in his head. Yeah? No, Rebbe telling to Levi. Okay. Yeah? Now, who is Levi? His student, the Talmid. Yeah, so the Talmid comes and the Talmid asks the question and tells the rabbi to the Talmid, right? I don't think you have a brain in your head. Yeah. Now, what's going on exactly here? If you look in the footnote, it says that Levi was Gdolei Talmidei Rebbe. He was the greatest of the students of Rebbe, right? And since his Rebbe knew that he was smart, he said, Lo matim lecha, right? Lishol she'ela kazot. It's not fitting for you to ask such a question. So therefore, nazafbo, right? He didn't just come and tell him, what are you talking shtiyot? He went and he gave it to him hard, boom, right? Moroccan, give him the sakin. Yeah, why? He comes and he says, Shelo yiyem b'davar karaui. He was not me'ayin be'emet kemo shetzarich. He didn't look into it perfectly. He says, mutar lo lerav. I want you to listen carefully. Mutar lo lerav leochiach et talmidav bidvarim kashim. It is permitted for a rabbi to chastise his students bidvarim kashim, with sharp words, kedei lezarazam la'ayin etev, in order to make them pay attention more, right? Lezarazam, to make them quicken to pay attention more, ulishamer min ha'ta'ut, and to watch themselves from making mistakes. V'chen katav Rambam, Ilchot Talmud Torah, Rambam mefurash, perek daled halacha hey, in nikar larav shehen mitrashim b'divrei Torah mitrapin alehen. If it's recognizable to the rabbi that the students are not learning Torah like they should, ulfichach lo evinu, and therefore they didn't understand, chayav yirgoz alehen. He's obligated to get beroges. You know what beroges is, right? Beroges on them, to get angry. Ulachliman bidvarim, to embarrass them with words, kedei lechadedan, in order to sharpen them. And that's what the Chachamim say, zerok mara betalmidim. You have to throw into the talmidim, you have to throw in them a bitterness, you have to throw mamash, you have to be sharp. There's no jokes. You understand? Come something else. Boom. Huh?
It is nothing.
Akadosh, now what we're going to do is we're going to share the screen. Okay? And okay, we're going to share the screen. Okay, and we're going to be over here. What do we just ask? Levi comes and he says we should have learned 16. That's over here where it says Litni Tetzayin. We should learn 16. Right? What is the 16? Amarle, he comes and he tells them, you don't have a brain. Why? What is the 16? Right? Imo, which is Anusat Aviv. Are you going to tell me now that it's his mother, which is the Anusa of the father? Imo Anusat Aviv, Klukta, the Rebbe Yehuda v'Rabbanan. The mother, which is Anusat Aviv, is a machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan. Uveplukta lo kamayri. And in a machloket, we're not dealing with. What is the case? Right? This is the first picture over here. So pay attention over here. Okay? Yaakov gets married to Puah. Okay? Remember, this with the rings is marriage, Nisuim. Here's Puah, here's Yaakov. Nolal lahem ben Reuven. They have a child called Reuven. Next. Okay? Yaakov, right, was Anas at Shifra. Shifra, another woman. It was Anasota. Okay? Over here, this picture. Right? One more time. Yes. Why is he mamzer? No, kama yom ze lo. Aisha yayta pnuya. The woman was never married. Shifra was not married. Shifra was not married. Since Shifra is not married, there's no mamzerut. Mamzerut, if she was married, she's a married woman, there's mamzerut. She's not mamzerut, there's nothing. So now what happens? This is called Ben Me'ones, a child from the Ones. His name is Levi. So here you have one more time. You have Yaakov with Puah. They have Reuven, normal marriage, normal child. Yaakov from Shifra, he violated her, and they had Levi. Now what happens is Reuven got married to Shifra and to Rivka. Here, this one over here, right? Maybe I should make it a little bit bigger. Reuven was over here. Reuven gets married to Shifra and to who else? To Rivka. Now remember, him getting married to Rivka is a foreign woman. But him getting married to Shifra. What is Shifra? Anusat Aviv. It's no. He violated her. It's not a mother. He never got married to her.
She's a korban.
What?
No, his son from another one gets married with her.
No, wait.
No. Yeah, no. So the son, his son, comes and he gets married to the woman that he violated.
Yes.
Okay? Now that is going to become a machloket, whether a person is allowed to do that or not. If you remember, we already learned this. Says the Gemara, then what happened? What happened is that Reuven dies. Now, since Reuven dies, Shifra, his mother, right, and Shifra, which is the mother of Levi, is ptura from Yibum and from Chalitza, Vehi poteret et Rivkat Sarata, which means like this.
Yeah. Baruch.
Right? What happens? What happens? Reuven, right? Reuven dies. Who should now do Yibum? No, Levi. It's always the brother. Don't Levi. Right? Remember, it's Levi. So now Levi, can he do Yibum to his mother? Obviously not. So therefore, just like Shifra is going to be Ptura, so she's Poteret Rivkat Sarata. So this is the case, right? So just like, right? That means you have the other case. This is very clear. Yeah? So now, according to this, says the Gemara, why don't we learn 16? So the Gemara answer is very simple. You know why we don't learn 16? Who told you that Reuven is allowed to get married to Anusat Aviv? So if you remember, we saw this was a machlok between Rabbi Uda and Rabbanan. Why was it a machlok between Rabbi Uda and Rabbanan? You remember it said that what was the pasuk? That to do with your father's wife, you're not allowed to get married to her. So therefore, since we said the machlok was, since it said that it was the wife, as long as it wasn't a wife, there was no real wife, he violated her. So according to the Shita, you're allowed to get married to Anusat Aviv. That's what he said. So he says this is a machlok between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, okay, Chachamim, whether a person's allowed to. According to Rabbi Yehuda, right, he's prohibited mina Torah, right, asura yalachi mina Torah. So therefore, since it's a machloket, right, between the rabbis and between Rabbi Yehuda, our Mishnah is not dealing with machlokot. So therefore, what Rabbi is answering Levi is, what are you coming and trying to invent me another case? You're right, it's a beautiful case, but what? But it's a machloket, and we don't bring machlokot in our Mishnah. Okay, that's what he says.
So Levi was not so off.
Right, 1 second. Says now the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara. Yeah, velo. Are you going to tell me that our Mishnah is not dealing with machlokot? What about Isur Mitzvah, the Isur Kedusha? Isur Mitzvah or Kedusha, the Plige Rabbi Akiva v'Rabbanan. There's a machloket between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbanan. Is there a din of Yibum and Chalitza in such a woman or not? The Katani. And we did learn it. Let's explain the case. Okay, this is the case. Pay attention. Yaakov v'David Achim. So Yaakov and David. Okay, they're brothers. Next, right? David mitchaten עם Miriam, shehi mamzeret hasura belav. Okay? Miriam is a mamzeret. Mamzeret. Since Miriam is a mamzeret, so therefore there's a negative commandment you can only marry to. Belav, lo ta'aseh. There's no karet. There's no karet. Meaning if somebody gets married to a mamzeret, there's no karet. It's a negative commandment, and then all his children become mamzerim. But there's no karet. It's not the same thing.
How was she mamzeret?
Somebody had relations with the mother. Somebody had relations with the mother, and she was a married woman, and she had this child. Okay? Now, what happens is, according to Chachamim, the Kiddushim are tofsim. It means it's a good Kiddushim. According to Rabbi Akiva, Kiddushim are not tofsim. Okay? Next. Says now, yeah? He says like this. He says, Met David. Okay? Now David dies. So now, according to Chachamim, Miriam, she has to do Yibum Doraita. Why? Because it was a viable marriage. It was a good marriage. But she's a Suram Yibum Midrabanan, because at the end of the day, she's a Mamzeret. Then therefore, she's obligated to do Chalitza. According to Rabbi Akiva, Miriam is Ptura from Yibum Chalitza. Why? Because according to Rabbi Akiva, it was not a marriage. Since it wasn't a marriage, there's no such thing as Yibum. So this is the case that we just mentioned here. Okay?
And passing one.
1 second. Fine. So now what happens is as follows. Okay? What happens is we're going to go to the next case. Okay? No questions. Yeah? So he says like this. Here also, by the way, if you want, you can look in the footnote. The footnote, he explains, Isur mitzvah or shniot la'arayot. The Gemara later on is going to explain what exactly are, why is it called mitzvah. But for example, he says, Chachamim, they made a decree on the mothers, on al-em imo ve'em aviv, kizera mishum ivo, imo, meaning the mother is an irva min Torah. The other ones are called shniot la'arayot, like it's a step once removed. Shniot la'arayot. So that's called Isur mitzvah. Okay? The Isur kedosha is that there's a lav in the Torah. For example, mamzeret, netina, all these things, that there's no karet, but there's an isur lav. So the Gemara is saying this is all machloket, but still, right, we're coming and we're mentioning them. Why? Because in Perek Haba, in the next chapter, we did bring down this case. Now, if you're going to tell me though, right, that we're not going to mention it because it's a machloket, what's going on? So the Gemara says, Bepirkin ka'amrina. We're talking about in our chapter, meaning in our Perek, we don't mention machlokot. In the second Perek, there's going to be machlokot, no problem. But in our chapter, there's no machlokot. Ask the Gemara, ve'ha bet Shammai matzidin et hatzarot la'achim, u'bet Hillel osrim. There's a Mishnah, right, that later on says in Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, it says, which is going to be in this Perek, because if you turn to Yud Gimel is still Perek Rishon. There it says, Bet Shammai, they permit the tzarot to the brothers. And Bet Hillel is the one that says asur. Meaning our Mishnah that says that it's going to be asur, that's Bet Hillel, it's not Bet Shammai, so it's a machloket. So therefore in our Mishnah, we are mentioning machlokot. So answers the Gemara, Bet Shammai bimkom Bet Hillel in the Mishnah. Bet Shammai in place of Bet Hillel is not even a Mishnah. Meaning there's no machloket. Because we pass in 100% like Bet Shammai. Meaning like Bet Hillel so much that Bichlal, it's not even, there's not even Bet Shammai here. We don't even pay attention to it. Okay? The Gemara is going to ask another question. Varei eshet achiv shelo haya be'olamo. Right? What does this mean? You have eshet achiv shelo haya be'olamo. What does that mean? That's this case right here. Okay? Eshet achiv shelo haya be'olamo. Let's pay attention to the case. Okay? The case over here. Eshet achiv shelo haya be'olamo, Daf Tet Amud Bet, that it's actually going to become a machloket between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. Kektani, and we did learn it. So pay attention. Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Okay, that's Aleph. Reuven and Shimon brothers. Reuven nasat Esther. So Reuven gets married to Esther. Now Reuven dies. Okay. Now remember, how many brothers are there? There's only Reuven and Shimon. Reuven dies. During that time, Levi is born. Okay, before Esther does the Yibum. So one more time. Reuven and Shimon are brothers. Reuven gets married to Esther, and Reuven dies. Now, before Shimon is able to do the Yibum, Levi is born. Okay? Shimon does Yibum to Esther. Okay? Everyone's with me? Shimon does Yibum to Esther. And then what happens? Shimon dies. Esther is prohibited to Levi because Eshet Achiv shelo haya be'olamo. Because it was the brother that he was not born at the time when Reuven was alive. So therefore, this is prohibited even according to Shitat Rabbi Shimon. Okay? Which means now the Gemara is going to go into the cases, right, to understand. Okay? And the Gemara is going to explain as follows. The Gemara says, right, like this. The Gemara says, sorry. Sorry. Now says the Gemara, answers the Gemara, Nolad ulvasof ibem, as lo palig Rabbi Shimon, which means like this. There was a machloka between Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim. What was the machloka between them? The machloket is that he says that you're allowed to do the Yibum is that kind of place where she was first nitiyabma to one of them, and then afterwards the brother died. But if afterwards, right, the brother dies, right, Rabbi Shimon comes and he permits la'ach shenolad liyabem et ishto. But if in the beginning, right, la'achar shemet echad achim nolad ulvasof ibem, that's there's no machloka between them. Meaning like this: the only machloka between Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim was what was the order? Was the order that first was done the Yibum from Shimon to Esther, and then Levi was born, or first Reuven died? Now Levi was born, and now the Yibum was done. So if the Yibum was done right afterwards, there's no machloka between Rabbi Shimon and Chachamim. So therefore, we are answering that also in our Mishnah, there's no machloket. Why is there no machloket? We're talking about a case where you had that it was first he was born, and then afterwards they went and they did the Yibum. So ask the Gemara, the Amar Rav Hoshia comes and he says, Chalukei Rabbi Shimon. But Rishona, no. Even in this case of Yibem, right, of Nolad Ulvasof Yibem, That's also machloka between them. So if it's not, so it says no, Hayitot of Rav Oshia. Rav Oshia was refuted and he retracted. Meaning that we thought that it's still going to be a machloka between them. It says no, we asked the question against Rav Oshia and we answered it up. And since we answered it up against Rav Oshia, he accepted it, and therefore there was no machloka between them. So again, we're going back that our Mishnah was no machloka between them. Okay? Now we're going to the next case. We're on Teta Mubet, 9b. The Amar of Yudah Marav says, Yudah Marav, V'chen Tani Rebchia, and also Tani Rebchia, Bekulan ani kore bahem, in all of these 15 women that are going to be the arayot, which are mentioned in our Mishnah, I could be mekayem the Mishnah later on. There's a Mishnah later on, Kavav Amud Aleph, that says that when you have two sisters falling in front of two brothers, ha'asura lazeh muteret lazeh, the asura lazeh muteret lazeh. One is prohibited to one, but she's permitted to the other one. And the other one is permitted to one, permitted to the other one. We're going to show the picture. 1 minute. I know you already see, I see the eyes. Achota shehi yevimta choletzet oy mityabemet. So the sister now, does she, that she's yevimta, does she do chalitza or does she do yibum? And here, that's where you have all these pictures. And then we're going to come and we're going to give 3 different explanations. Okay, 3 different explanations. Okay?
It's nothing. It's only.
Now, the Gemara now is going to bring 3 pirushim on what we just mentioned. Okay, 3 pirushim, and then we're going to do all the pictures about how do we apply the 15 cases from the Mishnah to what we just said. Okay, so says the Gemara. Rav Yehuda metargem. Rav Yehuda explains, mechamoto va'elach, right? It says this is only to do with the mother-in-law onwards. Aval shita ba v'dereisha, for the 6 first cases. Remember, there were first 6 cases at the beginning. There was the daughter, right? The granddaughter from both sides, the daughter of the wife, meaning the stepdaughter, and the granddaughter of basically the wives, meaning everything from the wife. So those were 6 cases to do with the daughters, whether it's his own daughter or granddaughters coming from his daughters or his wife. There were 6 cases. Then we went upwards. You remember? Because once we went to the wife, downwards 3 generations, we went upwards 3 generations. So it says this, everything that we just mentioned now was only from the mother-in-law onwards, right? This is why. Maitama, Kevan de legabe bito, because to do with his own daughter, the onsin mashkachat, only in a case of ones can you find the case of 2 sisters, right, doing yibum. Beniswin, by marriage, lo mashkachala, you can never find such a case, which means you can never find the case of niswin by the case of the daughters, right? There's no such thing as in niswin. You could only find an ones, in violation. So because of that, we prefer to say that this is only talking about from the mother-in-law upwards. We're not talking about all 15 cases. We're only talking about from the mother-in-law, meaning number 6 onwards. Beniswin kamaidi, beonasin lo kamaidi. But we're not talking about onasin, which means the way that we just applied this, again, one more time, we have 15 cases in our Mishnah. Rav Yudah Marav comes and he says, in all of them, I have a case where you could have 2 sisters getting married to 2 brothers, where whoever's going to be prohibited to one is going to be permitted to the other one, permitted to the one, permitted to the other one. And therefore, what is the question? Does the sister do yibum or chalitza? So the first shita, Rav Yehuda comes and he explains, we're not talking about anyone in the categories of number 1 to 5, which is the daughter, the granddaughter mitzad the son, granddaughter mitzad the daughter, or the daughter of the wife, or the granddaughter from the wife mitzad the boy, or granddaughter mitzad the wife mitzad the girl. Those are going to be those first 5 cases. We don't have any of that. Okay, second explanation. Says the Gemara, Abaye comes and he's metargem, and he comes and he says like this. He says, "Af bito me'anusato." Even his daughter from his anusa is also going to be the same halacha, right? Why? Right? Kevan dashkuche mashkachala. Since you could find such a case that there is going to be a case of the daughter, ibaya mina onsin. Even if it's going to be mina onsin, teve, so it could be ibaya, and if it's going to be from the nisuin teve, it should also be like that. Meaning, as long as you have an opportunity of bito, you could have 2 sisters doing yibum, right? So Rebbe Chia was also talking about this case as well. It's only through honest. Doesn't matter. Okay? Aval le'eshet achiv shelo yeh be'olamo, lo. But eshet achiv shelo yeh be'olamo doesn't apply. My time, what's the reasoning? Given the Rebbe Shimon, who the meshkachla, it's only for the Rebbe Shimon that you could find such a case, that 2 sisters would do the yibum. The Rabbanan, you will never find it. Uve plukta lo kamaidi. Just like we answered before, we're not mentioning machlokot. So therefore, according to, again, one more time, according to Rabbi Yehuda, this general rule about the 2 sisters with 2 brothers is only from chamoto upwards. right? Meaning chamoto and the rest of the Mishnah, not the first case of the Mishnah, which has to do with the daughter, the granddaughters, chule v'chule. According to Shitat Abaye, it has to do with everybody, except for Eshet Achiv Shelo Belomo. Why not? Because it could only be found according to Rishimon, not according to Chachamim, and we're not in Machlokot. Third explanation, that Rav Safra Metargem, Rav Safra comes and he explains, after Eshet Achiv Shelo Belomo, it even applies to the case of Eshet Achiv Shelo Belomo. Mashkachalan, you could find it Beshita Achim if you have 6 brothers. Valiba de Rabbi Shimon, and according to Rabbi Shimon, okay, v'simanach, and what's the siman to remember? Met nolad v'ibem, met nolad v'ibem. If he died, then the brother was born, he did ibum, then died, brother born, and then ibum, which we'll explain, okay? Now that we just did that, now we're going to go back to the pictures to understand what are we talking about? How do I apply all these 15 cases? What's going on? So it says the Gemara, the Amar of Yehuda, there's 3 of Shariyot, right? 2 of them are Surot Lityabem. One of them is going to be Muteret, one of them is going to be Asura. And number 3, Shtehen Mutarot Lityabem. So now we're going to explain the case. Case number 1. Arba Achim, 4 brothers. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. 4 brothers, okay? Next, continue, right? Reuven and Shimon hitchatnu im shtei achayot Rachel veLeah. Be'atama. So Reuven and Shimon, right? And Rachel and Leah. So Reuven gets married to Rachel, Shimon gets married to Leah, or you could have done vice versa, whichever one you want, doesn't matter. Okay? But basically you have 2 brothers getting married to 2 sisters. Okay? Next. Reuven and Shimon both die. Now Rachel veLeah, at the same time, there's zikukot, bozmanit, to Yehuda and Levi, and therefore kol achat hi achot zekukato, v'lachen asura lityabem kemo achot ishto. Meaning like this: at the same time, these 2 girls are sisters. Yeah. Would there have been a prohibition for them to get married to Levi or to Yehuda? No. Why? Because technically speaking, just like Reuven and Shimon got married to 2 sisters, Levi and Yehuda could get married to 2 sisters. But the problem is, exactly, each one. The problem is, since they both fall simultaneously to each of the brothers, that's called there's a zikah. Remember, zikah means there's a bond, there's a connection already. Once there's a connection, it's like achot ishto. It's like all of a sudden that it becomes that there's a prohibition because each one is prohibited to do the ibum because of the sister. Because if one does the ibum, how does the other one do the ibum? Right? It's achot ishto. So because of that, it's going to exempt. Okay? One second. Next case. Okay? Now, how do we explain in the same case that one of them is going to be muteret and one of them is going to be prohibited? So now you have the same case. 4 brothers. Reuven, right? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Okay? Reuven and Shimon again get married to sisters, Rachel veLeah. Exact same. Now they had, right? Rachel had a daughter. Okay? Rachel over here, she has a daughter. Right? But from a previous marriage. Right? It's a previous marriage. Okay? Now what happens? Levi gets married to the daughter of Rachel. Yeah? No. Listen carefully. You've got Reuven and Shimon getting married to Rachel veLeah. So 2 brothers to 2 sisters. The 3rd out of the 4 brothers got married to the sister-in-law's daughter. Yeah? The sister-in-law's daughter. What is the sister-in-law's daughter? Rachel's daughter. So you want to say it's Reuven's stepdaughter. Okay? But it's a sister-in-law's daughter. Okay? Now what happens? What happens now is as follows. Reuven and Shimon die. So now Rachel cannot get married to Levi. Why cannot get married to Levi? Because she's but she's the mother-in-law. Okay? And therefore, she's not the kukata, right? Rachel is kukata. Leah is permitted to get married to, right, Levi. Now, but mitzad Yehuda, right, Rachel and Leah are zikukot Yehuda, right, at the same time. So because of that, they're prohibited to Yehuda. So it comes out that Rachel is prohibited to Levi. Rachel is prohibited to Levi because it's the mother-in-law, but Rachel is permitted to Yehuda. So to one she's permitted and one she's prohibited. But since Rachel and Leah both fall in front of Yehuda, so that's why she's prohibited. Only because of that, right? Because she's prohibited to Yehuda because they're both together. The 2 sisters together are falling in front of her. Okay? Okay, 1 second. So says the Gemara, here I have Arba'a Achim. I've got 4 brothers. Right? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Reuven, Shimon get married to 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. Right? Just like we said before. Now each one of them had a previous daughter. So now we added on to the case. Each one of the 2 sisters had a previous daughter. So now what happens is each one of the brothers got married to those daughters. So you have Reuven and Shimon getting married to Rachel and Leah. Levi, right, getting married to the daughter of Rachel, and Yehuda getting married to the daughter of Leah. Okay, that's the case. Okay, so now what happens? Says the thing, what happens now? Reuven and Shimon die. So now since Reuven and Shimon die, Rachel is the mother-in-law of Levi, and therefore she's not Zekuto of Leah. So therefore Leah is not Achot Zekuto, so she's permitted. And the same thing with Rachel, she's permitted to Yehuda. So in this case, both sisters are permitted to do Yibum. Both sisters are permitted to do Yibum, to a cross. Why? Because one more time, Levi is married to Bat Rachel.
Yeah.
Yehuda is married to Bat Leah.
Yeah.
Now what happens is, since Reuven and Shimon die, you have Rachel and Leah together. Rachel cannot do Yibum to Levi because she's the mother-in-law. Leah cannot do the Yibum to Yehuda because she's the mother-in-law. So therefore, since each one is disqualified, she's not considered a Chod Zekukato because they were never Zakuk to them. They can never become permitted to them. So because of that, all of a sudden now, Rachel could get married to Yehuda and Leah could get married to Levi. You got it? Because now Shtehen, that's what it says, the Shte Achayot Mutarot Lityabem. The 2 sisters are permitted to be Lityabem because they cross. Next case.
If before they were in-laws, now they would be completely in-laws.
Yeah, Bito, the daughter. What is the case of the daughter? So it says the Gemara, right? Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda are brothers. Okay, Reuven was Anas Isha, and this is, by the way, why we said in the Gemara that according to this shita, I think it was Rabbi Yehuda, he says the first shita said we didn't want to bring the first cases of the daughters because you could only find it in honest, and we're not talking about honest, we're talking about marriage. So this is the case of the daughter that it could only be found in honest. So because of that, he didn't want to count it in the first 6 cases. So he says like this. Reuven comes and he's Anas Isha. Who's this Isha? Doesn't say her name, just says Isha. Dinulda Rachel. Rachel was born from this marriage. Okay, now Shimon Anas etota Isha. Right? Shimon, the brother of Reuven, was Me'anes, the exact same woman. Yeah? It was one after another. Yeah? So Anas etota Isha. And now Nulda Leah. So from the same woman that she was, Ne'aneset, right? She was violated, right? You have these 2 cases. Okay? Fine. Then all of a sudden, Levi gets married to Rachel, and Yehuda gets married to Leah. Yeah, you're going to tell me this is a chulant. Yeah? Look what's going on here. You have Levi getting married to Rachel, which is the brother's real daughter. It's basically his niece, but from a violation. And Yehuda is getting married to his niece through a violation. Okay? You guys are with me or not?
We show.
Fine, okay, fine. Levi and Yehuda, what happens is Levi and Yehuda both die. Okay, without children. Now, Reuven, remember that Reuven and Shimon had children. Are you guys with me? Reuven and Shimon already had children. They both had a daughter. So it says Reuven, he could do Yibum to Leah because Rachel is not a Chod Zizukato because she's the daughter. And also Shimon could do the same thing with Rachel, which means like this. Reuven and Shimon, right? What's going to happen now? Levi and Uda died. So now Reuven could get married to Leah. And meaning he could do Yibum to the Leah. And the Shimon could do the Yibum to Rachel.
No.
Why? Very simple. Because what's happening? Right? Reuven's daughter is Rachel. The same girl. Reuven, his daughter is Rachel. Leah is his niece. Okay, the same thing with Shimon. So the same thing. So basically what's happening is, once you come and you tell me now that when Levi got married to Rachel, Yehuda got married to, right, Leah. So now what happens is that now Reuven can get married to Bat Anusato. He could do Yibum to Bat Anusato. There's no problem. And the same way goes the other way around. Okay?
No. You
Right,
can.
next.
You can. Okay? You want to finish?
Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. I'm continuing. Afterwards, you could ask a question. So remember, write it down. Says the Gemara. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Uda are brothers. Okay, now this is going to be the granddaughter. Remember, we're trying to go through all the cases. You remember? So now we're going to the granddaughters. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Uda. Right? Reuven was Olidet Chana. Okay, and Shimon was Olidet Tzila. Okay, through marriage, everything through marriage. Sorry.
I don't see the names.
Doesn't matter. Basically, you have two brothers getting married and they had two children, right? Chana and Tzila. Okay, now what happens is as follows. Gimel. Yosef mitchaten im Chana v'Tzila. Another guy. Outside. Yeah? Yosef gets married to, right? Remember, the brothers were always Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Uda. Yeah? So he says, Yosef gets married to also Tzila and also Ada. He's allowed to. Yosef gets married to two wives. The two wives are cousins. Correct? They're cousins.
Who are the two for the ones above?
Reuven and Shimon. Reuven and Shimon had Reuven and Chana, the daughters, 100% daughters. Reuven has Chana, Shimon has Tzila. Doesn't matter about the wives. Okay? Yosef gets married to both of them. Number Dalit. Okay? Now, Chana has Rachel, which is the granddaughter of Reuven, and Tzila has Leah, which is the granddaughter of Shimon. Capish? Makes sense, yeah? Okay, fine. Next, Levi gets married to Rachel, and Uda gets married to Leah, which means Levi gets married to his great niece. Okay? And Uda gets married to the great niece. Okay? Until here we're clear. Because we have to get now Babito, we have to get the granddaughter. Now what happens is, right? Levi and Uda die without children. Because remember, obviously Reuven and Shimon already had children. They had a daughter. Right? So Levi and Uda die without children. So now technically Reuven could do Yibum to Leah because Rachel is his granddaughter. And therefore she's not Zekukalo. Shimon could do Yibum to Rachel because Leah is the granddaughter, which is not Zekukalo. Which means like this. Right? I come down here. You have Rachel and Leah. Remember that Rachel is the granddaughter of Reuven. Leah is the granddaughter of Shimon. So therefore now, Reuven, we're here. Here. Reuven could do Yibum to Leah, with his great niece. And Shimon could do Yibum to his great niece Rachel. Why? Because since each one cannot go to the other one, they're not Zekukalo, so therefore it's going to be permitted. Okay? That was the case of Bat Bito. Now we're going to the other case. The other case is, Bat Beno. What's the case of Bat Beno? So says the Gemara, right? Very quickly. Okay, one more time. You have the four brothers, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Uda. Now, again, Reuven has David, Shimon has a boy, Moshe, because it's Bat Beno. Right? So we have the coming from the boys. Okay, so you have two boys. Okay, now, Gimel. David gets married to Shifra, and he has Rachel. Okay, so here's David, he gets married to Shifra, he has Rachel. David gets divorced from Shifra. Divorced. We put him divorced. Now Moshe gets married to Shifra. Moshe gets married to Shifra. Interesting. That means basically the brother. No, it's cousins. Sorry, it's cousins. That's why. Because remember, David and Moshe are first cousins. So David got married to Shifra. He divorced her. Then Moshe wanted to take the Wachla into his house, so then Moshe got married to her, to Shifra. And now he had, right? So Moshe itchaten im Shifra, Molid Leah. So now you already had a child over here, Rachel, and then they got divorced. Right? That's what you have here, like the circle against the ring. Okay? And then you had here Leah. Now Levi gets married to Rachel, and Yehuda gets married to Leah. So again, one more time, it's going to be great nieces. Capish? But it's coming from the men. And the exact same story. What's the exact same story? Right? It says here, Levi Yehuda metu. I don't know why they didn't become gray in this picture. They made a mistake. Right? They died without children. Okay.
They covered, they did, but no gray.
No, but everyone's covered. Right? Levi and Yehuda, they died without children, and all the pictures usually are covered, unless it's a baby. Levi. Reuven could do Yibum to Leah because Rachel is a granddaughter. Right? And therefore she's not Zekukalo. And Shimon could do Yibum to Rachel because it's a granddaughter and she's not Zekukalo. Okay? Next picture. Okay, next case. 13 from 24. Right? Batishto. Yeah, what's the case of Batishto? Says you have Nachshon gets married to two women. Okay, with Rachel and Leah. So you have Im Rachel, Im Leah. Okay, they got married. Rachel v'Leah nolda limotehen batama. So Rachel v'Leah get married to their mothers. Get married. They're born to their mothers. Okay, so that means Nachshon gets married to Rachel. I don't know why they're calling them Rachel. It should have been the opposite. But Nachshon gets married to Leah, and they had Leah. I don't know why. Again, you can't really call the daughter the same name. But okay, Nachshon dies. So now, Im Rachel niset leReuven, right? Rachel niset leLevi. Im Leah niset leShimon, v'Leah niset leYuda. Oh.
No,
one more time. Nachshon dies. He was married to Em Rachel ve'Em Leah. They had Rachel ve'Leah. That's why it was like two different names. Rachel ve'Leah. Now, what happened was Em Leah gets married to Shimon, Em Rachel gets married to Reuven, and Levi gets married to Rachel, and Yehuda gets married to Yehuda. So the four brothers, the two outer brothers are getting married to the original wives of Nachshon, right? These four are brothers. Reuven, Levi, Yehuda, Shimon.
Okay.
Achim. Okay?
Yeah.
So
Nachshon was not related. No.
Nachshon was not related to anybody.
He was married to two girls.
He was married to two girls. So now when he died, right? When he died, first of all, he already had two girls. He had two girls. So they go to the shoops. Now, Shimon got married to Em Leah. Reuven gets married to Em Rachel. Levi and Yehuda, each one gets married to the children of Em Leah and Rachel, which is Rachel and Leah. Okay? So you have the four brothers getting married to two co-wives and to two sisters from the father. Two sisters from the father. Okay? Fine. Yeah, this is a mess one. Now all of a sudden, right, what happens? Levi and Uda die without children. Okay? So that's all the way down here. Levi and Uda, they die without children. Right? So these are these ones. These two, right? These are these two wives now, Rachel and Leah in the middle. So now what happens is like this. Leah is prohibited to Shimon because she's considered Batishto. Right? And therefore it's not Zekukto, then Shimon could be Mimacheb, and Rachel is the same thing, which means like this. Right? What happens here? Levi and Uda die. Okay? Leah, right, is prohibited to Shimon. Why is Leah prohibited to Shimon? Because it's Batishto. So Leah cannot do Yibum to Shimon because it's the daughter of his wife, Em Leah. So therefore, since she's not Zekukatalo, so therefore Rachel could do Yibum to Shimon. The same halacha applies to the other way case. Reuven cannot do Yibum to Rachel because Rachel is the daughter of his wife, Em Rachel. So therefore, she's not Zekukato, and therefore they cross. Okay? Next. That was Bat Ishto. Now we have to go to the grandchildren of Ishto. Bat Bita, the daughter of the daughter. Not Bat Ishto, Bat Bita. Okay? Ada has Chana, and Tzila has Midian. Next. Okay? Moshe gets married to Chana and Midian. So means here you have the two of them up here. Okay? Now you have Moshe, foreign guy, gets married to the two daughters, but they have nothing to do with each other. Okay, to Miriam and Chana. Next, Chana has Rachel, that's over here, and Miriam has Leah. So you have two women here, two girls. Okay, they're sisters from the father. Okay, Reuven, Levi, Yehuda, Shimon, again brothers. They are getting married to, right, Ada, Rachel, Leah, Tzila. So therefore, Reuven gets married to the woman all the way up here. Okay? Shimon gets married to the woman all the way up here. Now, Levi and Yehuda get married to the two daughters of them. Okay, which is basically these women. So you have the four of them get married to these four women. Okay? Now what happens is Levi and Yehuda die. So now Reuven is a Sur and Rachel because it's a granddaughter. Right? And therefore it's not Zekukato, so you could do Yibum to Leah. Shimon is the same thing, which means like this. One more time. Here, Levi and Yehuda die. When Levi and Yehuda die, I'm going to ask you a question. Reuven, can he do Yibum to Rachel? No. Why? Because Rachel is the granddaughter of his wife. Ada was his wife, right? Ada had Chana. Chana had Rachel. So now, if Rachel falls in front of Reuven, it's his granddaughter. His wife's granddaughter. No, so but he could take Leah. So because of that, since Rachel is disqualified, exactly the exact same. Next picture. Now it's going to be Bat Bena, no? Let's see. Yes, Bat Bena. Okay. Ada has Yosef. Sila has Asher. Okay. Then what happens is like this. Yosef gets married to Chana. That's this woman over here. Okay. Yosef gets married to Chana. And they an outside woman. And they have Rachel. Okay. Now Sila has Asher. Okay. Now what happens? Yosef gets divorced. Okay. Now Asher takes Chana. Okay. Now, but beforehand, they already had Rachel. Remember that. So what happens? Right? What happens is Asher and Chana have Leah. Okay, so that means before Yosef and Chana, they had Rachel. They got divorced. Now Asher and Chana has Leah. Okay, so now what happens? Reuven, Levi, Uda, right, and Shimon, again, they're all brothers. They get married to all the women. So again, you have Reuven getting married now to Ada, okay, that she had Yosef. You have Levi and Uda getting married to Rachel and Leah, that came from the children, right? And then you have Shimon getting married to Sila. Okay? So now, obviously, we make sense now the next picture. Levi and Uda die. So now, 1 second. Can Reuven get married to Rachel? Reuven cannot get married to Rachel because it's Bat Bena, not Babita, but Bena. Remember, his wife's son had a daughter, which is Rachel. So since he cannot get married to Rachel, but it's Bat Bena, so therefore it's disqualified. So therefore you can do it to Leah, and the same thing vice versa with Shimon. Next case. Chamoto, mother-in-law. Now we're going to the mother-in-law. Okay? Mother-in-law. This is a simple one. Okay? Pay attention. Okay? Mother-in-law. Rachel and Leah are sisters. Okay? Rachel has a daughter, Chana. Leah has a daughter, Shifra. What happens now is, Levi, Reuven, Shimon, Uda, they get married with all four of them. So you have Levi gets married to Rachel. Reuven and Shimon get married to Chana and Shifra, which are the daughters of them. And remember, these are the two cousins. And Yehuda get married to the other sister. So Levi and Yehuda get married to the two sisters, Rachel and Leah. And Reuven and Shimon get married to the daughters, which are the cousins. What happens is, Levi and Yehuda die. So now what happens is, 1 second. If Reuven, right, is going to get married to Chana, right, what's going to happen? Reuven was already married to Chana. So if he gets married to Rachel, what happens? It's his mother-in-law. Yeah, you with me? It's the mother-in-law. And if he gets married, and if Shimon gets married to Shifra, it's his mother-in-law. So because of that, that's why he said, Levi Yehuda, right? Metim no yodim, Reuven asu b'Rachel chamoto, miyabim et Leah. And Shimon asu b'Leah chamoto, v'yabim et Rachel. Next, Em chamoto, the mother of the mother-in-law. How do you have this case? So it says Rachel and Leah are sisters, and they had grandchildren. What are the grandchildren? Right? Chana and Shifra. These are grandchildren now. Now what happens is that the four brothers come and they get married. So you have Levi getting married to Rachel, Reuven and Shimon getting married to the grandchildren, right? And Yehuda getting married to Leah. Now when they die, which means Levi and Yehuda die, so now Reuven and Shimon, if they're going to, and they were already married to Chana and Shifra, if they're going to now have Rachel, it's the mother of the mother-in-law. Right? That's what we're saying. It's Em Chamivo Chamoto. So because of that, the Mutal to the other side. Okay? Next picture. Achoto meimo. Yeah? Achoto meimo. How do you have this case? You have Nachshon gets married to Rachel and Bilha. Now both of them have daughters, which are sisters from the father. Look over here. Let me make it bigger so you could see. One more time. Nachshon gets married to Rachel and he gets married to Bilha. Now, this is Bat Rachel and this is Bat Bilha. Okay, Bat Bilha. Then what happens is Nachshon dies and Yaakov takes Rachel and Bilha. So Yaakov gets married to the two daughters, to the two daughters. Okay, or the daughters of the women. Okay. Then it says, okay, now Noldu lahem Reuven V'Shimon Levi Yehuda Achim. So now you have a case of that you have the. Listen to this here. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, they are brothers. So now they come and they're going to come from this marriage. So you have one more time. Nachshon gets married to Rachel. Nachshon gets married to Bilhah. This is the daughter of Bilhah. This is the daughter of Rachel, but they're not the daughters of Nachshon. They have nothing to do with Nachshon. These are the daughters. Okay. Now what happens? Right? Yaakov is in here. Yaakov gets married to Rachel and Bilhah. Okay. Now between them, they have all these four brothers. Okay. Now what happens is Yehuda gets married with the daughter of Rachel. Levi gets married with the daughter of Bilhah. So look what happened over here, right? Yehuda gets married to the daughter of Rachel. Levi gets married to the daughter of Bilhah. Okay? Now Levi and Uda die. When Levi and Uda die, what's happening now? Levi and Uda die. Reuven is a sur bebat Rachel because it's the sister from the mother. But he's permitted to do Yibum to Bilhah because it's not a chot zikuto. The same thing happens with Shimon. Let's remember one more time, right? Reuven over here, if he's going to do now Yibum, how's he going to do Yibum? If he does Yibum, right, from this side, right, to Bat Rachel, he cannot. Because if he's going to do it to Bat Rachel, it's going to be actually a problem. Okay? Because then it becomes a sister from the mitzad, how do you call it? From the father. You understand? So because of that, it's going to be a problem. From the sister from the mother. No? Sister from the achotomimo, from the mother, not from the father. Okay? Next picture. 19. אחות אמו. Fine. Kalev gets married to Chela and Nara. Yeah, so Kalev gets married to Chela and Nara. Chela has a daughter, Chana, and Nara has a daughter, Tzila. Okay? Kalev dies. Okay? And Yachziel gets married with Chela and Nara. Okay? So he gets married to the two wives. Okay? That means this guy died and he took the two wives. Chela has Rachel and Nara has Leah. Okay? From this marriage. Then what happens is Yaakov gets married to Rachel and Leah. So it's Yaakov, the third guy now. He comes and he gets married to Rachel and Leah, the children, right, of Yachziel. Then Rachel has Reuven and Leah has Shimon.
Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. Simple.
Yaakov takes another wife.
This is Yaakov.
Over here. This Yaakov takes another wife now. Because he already had two wives. Now he takes a third wife. Right? I don't even know her name. I can't even see her name. Yeah? Yeah? Fine. Then it says Levi gets married with Chana and Yehuda gets married with Tzila. So here you have the two children. They're getting married to these two girls. Okay? Now Levi and Uda die. Tzila and Chana fall in front of Reuven and Shimon. Libum. Reuven is not zokek at Chana because it's achot imo, and therefore he does zibum to Tzila. Shimon is not zokek Tzila because it's achot imo, and he does zibum with Chana. Yes, everything's oto ikaro. Next, Eshet Achiv Meimo. Yaakov gets married to Bilhah and Zilpah when they have children from previous marriages. Naphtali v'Yisachar. Okay, so these are these two. Okay, next, Bilhah has a child to Reuven, and Levi v'Zilpah, they have Yehuda, Shimon v'Yehuda. So look, you have from here, you have Shimon v'Yehuda and Levi and Reuven from this marriage. Okay, now these are all brothers. This is brothers from the mother. This is brothers from the father, and brothers from the father, right? Not from the mother. Okay.
So the two external are external.
The two externals are externals. They have nothing to do with anything. But mitzad sheni, this guy is the brother of these guys from the mother. Yeah. These guys are brothers of these guys with the brother from the father, and these guys are brothers from this guy from the mother. Okay.
So it's the same thing. They will go all the way down and then cross.
Naphtali and Yisachar, they get married to two sisters, Rachel and Leah. So that means these two outer ones, which were not really connected to each other. Okay, these two outer ones are not connected to each other. They get married to Rachel and Leah. Okay. Next, Naphtali and Yisachar, they both die. So these two guys die on the outside. Okay, now these two were sisters, right? Achayot. Why were they sisters, Rachel and Leah? Because here, these two were, who was Rachel and Leah? Here they are. Here they're sisters. Okay? They were sisters. Okay, no, they had nothing to do with anything else. Okay? Yeah? Now it says like this. Right? So, right? One second. Yehuda and Levi, they do yibum to Rachel and Leah. So, here you have Yehuda and Levi. They come and they do yibum to Rachel and Leah. They crisscross, right? And they do yibum. Now, why are they doing this? Because of the two brothers. Because it has to be brothers mitzad ha'abba. Correct?
No, אין להם בעיה, because he was from the other side. They can cross, and there's no...
No, you know what I just realized? So now what happens is like this. Levi and Uda Die, and Rachel is asura to Reuven because it's Eshet Achiv Mi'imo, and therefore it's not Achot Zukuton, it's Muterelo. The same thing is the other way. Leah is asura to Shimon because it's Eshet Achiv Mi'imo, right, which is basically from the mother, right? Rachel and Achot Zukuton, which means like this. In this case, what happened? Is Eshet Achiv Meimo from the mother, meaning from the mother, it's the Eshet Achiv, Eshet Ach, from the mother, not from the father. So because it's not Zikugato, they have to switch. Okay, next. Achot Ishto. How do you have the sister-in-law? So it says very simple. Naftali gets married to Ada Vetzila. Ada has Dinah, right? Olida Dinah, and Salah has Naamah. Now what happens is Naftali dies. Okay, so now somebody else gets married to Ada Vetzila. So somebody else gets married to the two original wives. What happens now is Ada has Rachel, okay, and Salah has Leah. Now each one is Achot Me'a'em. Each one is a sister from the mother. Okay, they're sisters from the mother, these ones. All these women here. They're sisters. Stepsisters. Stepsisters. No, it's not stepsisters. Stepsisters is somebody usually outside. They're half-sisters. Half-sister means that they have half real blood.
Because the mother is
half, because the mother is the same thing, right? So it's half siblings, not stepsiblings. Levi, Reuven, Shimon, Yehuda מתחתנים Dinah, Rachel ולאה ונעמה. One more time, let me see. One more time. Levi gets married to, this is Dinah, I think her name is. Okay. Yehuda gets married to Naama. And Reuven and Shimon get married to Rachel ולאה. Okay. Now what happens? Levi and Yehuda, they die. So now, since Levi and Uda Die, so now what happens? Levi and Uda Die. Dinah is Asura Reuven. Where's Dinah? Here's Dinah. Dinah is Asura to Reuven. Why is she Asura Reuven? Because, right? Why? Because it's Achot Ishto.
Yeah.
One more time. Dinah, right?
Yeah.
Dinah is the daughter of Ada. Rachel is the daughter of Ada. So these are sisters. So Dinah is Achot Ishto of Reuven. So therefore, when Levi dies, Dinah cannot get married to Reuven. It's Achot Ishto. Okay? So that's what it says over here. Dinah is a surah Reuven she'achot Ishto. Lachen ena nizkeke lo. And therefore, he's going to be miyabeh min Naamah, not Dinah. He has to go to Naamah, which was on this side. The same thing another way. Naamah is the surah on Shimon. She's Achot Ishto, and she's not Zekuka lo. So therefore, Shimon is miyabeh Medina. Right? So Reuven, Shimon is miyabeh Medina, this side, and Reuven is going to be miyabeh Naamah on this side. Okay? Next, 22. Eshet achiv shelo yeh be'olamo. Okay? Says the Gemara, right? Here we're talking about Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, their brothers. Reuven gets married to Rachel. Shimon gets married to Leah. Okay, they're sisters. So two brothers get married to two sisters. Okay? Reuven dies. Okay, so therefore what happens is afterwards, Nolad Yisachar. So you add in a guy in the picture here. Yisachar, and that's why he looks like a baby here. Okay, Levi does Yibum to Rachel. So Levi does the Yibum to Rachel. Okay, now Shimon dies. Okay, you see Shimon over here, Shimon dies. Now you have Leah. So what happens? Afterwards, Nolad Zevulun. Another guy being born. Yehuda is miyabeh min Leah. So now Yehuda does Yibum to Leah. And now what happens? Oh, who else is dying here? Yehuda and Levi die now. So without children. So now Rachel and Leah, they fall in Yibum in front of Yisachar Zevulun. Now Rachel is Asura and Yisachar because of Eshet Achiv Shelo Belomo. She's not Zekukalo, and therefore Yisachar could do Yibum to Leah Chota. And Leah is Asura and Zevulun because of Eshet Achiv Shelo Belomo, and therefore she's not Zekukalo. So therefore Zevulun could be do Yibum to Rachel. Second last picture, Kalato. Yeah, how do you have a case of Kalato? So Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda are brothers. So Reuven, he has a son, Yosef. Shimon has a son, Moshe. Yosef gets married to Rachel, and Moshe gets married to Leah, and they're sisters. Okay, Yosef and Moshe both die. So here, these two cousins, they both die. Levi and Uda get married to Rachel and to Leah. Then what happens is now Levi and Uda die. So since Levi and Uda die, Rachel and Leah, they fall in the boom in front of Reuven and Shimon. Now Reuven is a sur berachel, but this is his daughter-in-law. Yeah, remember, Yosef and Rachel were married, and then Yosef died. So now Rachel got married to Levi. Now when Levi dies, Rachel cannot get married to Reuven, because that's the daughter-in-law. So, right? And the same thing here, right? Shimon cannot get married to Leah, because it's the daughter-in-law. So each one have to switch. Last picture. According to him, he says you could only find two achayot be'ones. What does that mean? According to Yaakov has two children, Reuven and Shimon. Yaakov was ones et Rachel v'Leah achayot. So Yaakov comes and he was me'anes these two women, Rachel and Leah. And okay, so now what happens is Levi nolad leRachel and Yehuda nolad leLeah. So from this ones comes ben me'ones, Levi and Yehuda. So imagine, he had two children normally, right? Reuven and Shimon. And now Levi and Yehuda are each one born from a different ones. Then what happens? You have Reuven and Shimon get married with Anusat Aviem, Rachel and Leah. So now what happens is Reuven and Shimon, that they were children, normal children, they come and they get married, right, to Rachel and Leah.
They come from the Anus, right? Not from another marriage.
No, Reuven and Shimon came from another marriage. Levi and Yehuda come from the Anus.
No, Levi and Yehuda.
Yes. But now Reuven and Shimon get married to their father's violated woman, each one. Right? That means Reuven gets married to Rachel.
There's no other woman on earth.
Okay. Then what happens is Reuven and Shimon die. Okay, Reuven and Shimon metim. Rachel and Leah are asurot to do yibum to Levi. Why are Rachel and Leah asurot to yibum to Levi? Because what happens is that Rachel, right? She's the mother. Mishum shen imam v'achot imam. Right? It's the mother and the mother's sister. Because remember, Rachel and Leah were sisters. So since Rachel, so now it comes out, Levi cannot do yibum. Remember, Reuven and Shimon die. When Reuven and Shimon die, Levi cannot do yibum to Rachel, because Rachel is his mother. Levi cannot do yibum to Leah, because his mother's sister. And the same the other way around. And that's this picture here. Right? And with this we finish, right, today's